G'day, good afternoon. Welcome to BHN Dunedin Specials as we talk to the Dunedin mayoralty candidates. And today we welcome to the show Jett Groshinski. Jett, good afternoon and welcome, sir.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me on.
No dramas, man. Hey, tell me about your surname. What's the family line behind the surname? Because it's a very unique one.
Well, it's originally Prussian, I believe. Actually, that's not actually originally our name either. Our name was originally Groshinski, but before World War One, to go and serve in World War One, you needed a birth certificate. Yeah. So we all went and got our birth certificates. However, they kind of screwed the name up just before we were being my family was being deployed. So it then changed from didn't really have the money to change it back. So yeah.
So an admin error gave you your surname. That must mean also it's probably quite unique. There mustn't, I mean, like if it's basically, and I don't mean to be offensive or offend you, but if it's kind of a spelling mistake, it means there mustn't be too many other ones out there in the world, because it would first implies it needs to be spelled incorrectly, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I don't think there is really many. It's funny. I think pretty much every Groshinski in New Zealand is related. Yeah.
Yep, no, I get that as well. All the Brittendens are, whether there was two family lines of Brittendens, one sort of North Island, one South Island, and they're all related somehow as well. So I kind of get it. I kind of get where you're coming from. Oh, fascinating. Yeah, I've got a friend who he's Maori, and in World War One, I don't believe they were paying Maori to fight, which seems revolting at the moment. Yeah. And so when his, I guess, great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather or whichever is the correct person went to sign up, they asked for his surname and he gave it, which was a Māori name. And the person repeated and went, Lucas? And he went, yep. And he went, oh. Well, yeah, because it was slightly tan skin. And he was like, oh, he asked me, and he claimed to be Italian. And he was cool, and he changed his surname to Lucas. And so he got paid to fight in the war. And then they kept that for the next, whatever it is, 80 years. And my friend has only just gone back to his actual ancestral name in the last probably 5-7 years. It's fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, no, that really is.
Yeah. What have you been up to today? Anything exciting?
No, not really anything exciting. Just, just going over some, I guess, preparation for this and some other, and the last forum next week.
Are you prepared for the hard questions?
Oh, I'm sure we'll find out.
Hey, well, it's good to have you on board. Obviously, you are a unique character, and straight away, you know, a unique character to do with age, especially. I was thinking about it, right? And I was thinking there are going to be some people, and you would probably be one of them, I would think, that goes age is no barrier and it shouldn't make any difference. I would disagree with that wholeheartedly. Because I could give you the opposing view, which is like Joe Biden in America. One of the main reasons, in my opinion, he shouldn't run again would be at the end of his next term, should he get in, he'll basically be almost 90. So in other words, I don't think a nearly 90-year-old should be in charge of the nuclear football, right? I just don't. So by definition, age matters and can make a difference. Now you're the other end of the spectrum. So I guess what I'm not saying it matters for you because I don't know you and we haven't had a chat yet, but in general, I think that age can be something that takes away from a candidacy, just like it is something that's going to take away from Biden's candidacy. How would you waylay people's fears who they look at you and they think, you're in your second year of university? That means a couple of years ago you were a secondary school student. All these councillors who are currently running, who have been there, they've been in the battle of politics, they're hardened veterans. How would you sell your age as, I don't even necessarily need to know as a benefit, because I think we can all tell the benefits of a fresh look and stuff, but how could you tell the voters that it's not a negative?
Well, I suppose Well, one of the main reasons that I was running was to bring, well, the different perspective, like you've said.
Mhm.
And I think it really comes down to more values-based things rather than, I guess, age itself. I've been trying to make sure that everyone's being represented, and I've just been trying to interact with the community throughout this entire process, and it's kind of, you're allowed to vote, yet there seems to be a perception that you're not allowed to stand. And every councillor that I've talked to, they've all pretty much said that their previous experience did not prepare them for the job of being on the council.
Right.
Yeah, so it's, I guess the big thing that I've been going for is just trying to listen to as many people as possible, and just, I guess, listening to everyone, and that I feel like your age doesn't matter in that sense. Yeah.
Well, I think your age doesn't matter when it comes to listening to people.
Yeah.
But I think, and when I say your age, Jett, I should be clear. I'm not saying your age, Jett. I guess I'm saying one's age. One's age doesn't matter when it comes to listening to people. But I think the example I've given about Biden was a pretty clear example that a lot of people would agree with, how age does matter and can be held against someone for I think actually the right reasons. I mean, I don't want a nearly 90-year-old in charge of the nuclear football. I think that would be I think it would be a bad mistake. And look, and going the other way, Jett, if we kept on going, what? So would it matter if it was a 12-year-old? Would it matter if it was a 15-year-old? Would it matter if it was, so we can get to a point where we all agree it matters. So why is, and I'm assuming you must be 19, 20?
Yeah, that's one. 19.
Why does it not matter, therefore, to be 19? Where is the line of demarcation to all of a sudden 16-year-old? Of course it matters. 19-year-old, no, doesn't matter at all. No difference.
Well, I feel like when everything else can apply to you, and so everything else can apply to you at a certain age, where, I mean, at the age of 18 in particular in New Zealand, the fact is you are allowed to stand, and in fact it should be encouraged that people do stand, to bring to bring that different perspective to the table. Yeah.
I 100% agree that you're allowed, and I'm no one saying that a 19-year-old can't stand. I'm just thinking about, like, I'm a voter, right? I haven't made my mind up who I'm voting for yet, and I'm a resident of Dunedin. I'm a voter in Dunedin. I'm a ratepayer in Dunedin, and I'm just looking at some. So I'll bring up your Facebook page, and I'll ask you a specific question that pertains to your age, because it pertains to your experience. So this is what you've written on your Facebook page. Kia ora. Few people have questioned what makes me qualified to be mayor. I'm prepared to listen to everybody. Great. I currently study a politics degree, so I understand legislation. So where I'm interested about hearing from you as to why your age is not a hindrance is, I think that's great. I wish I'd studied politics at university. I wish it had been something I'd done. But if this is your second year of university, then that means you've had, what, 3 full semesters of studying politics? And to make the claim, so I understand legislation, with 3 semesters of a theoretical study as opposed to kind of the nuts and bolts of it, that to me, and I'm not saying, let me be clear, I'm not saying that means you're not quite, I'm not saying any of those things, or you shouldn't. What I'm saying is that purely because of your age, purely, like if you'd had a PhD in politics, it would be different because you would have more experience. But purely because of your age, you can only have had 3 semesters of this.
That is true.
So just purely because of your age and the number of years you've been on this planet, that you can't have the same experience for someone who
that is right. I mean, I can only have up to 19 years worth of life experience, and everything like that is of course, which does, to an extent, it can be a little bit of a hindrance in certain ways. But
I'm being a realist and saying you have to get past that to get my vote and to get lots of other people's votes. You have to get past that, and you have to convince me and others as to why voting for a 19-year-old with less experience in the world and less experience, certainly politically, is actually the right decision for all of Dunedin. Now, be clear on what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision. I'm saying it's your job to tell me why it's the right decision. And that's kind of what I'm asking you, based around your experience, why it's the right decision to have you as mayor based on your experience, which is intrinsically intertwined with your age, because you can't have as much experience as a 63-year-old.
Yeah.
So you've got less. So it is seen as, if not literally, a negative when it comes to your experience. So why should I vote? What's the reason that you see that all your other benefits, which we are going to talk about, outweigh that hindrance to be the best person to lead this council?
Well, I feel like, at the moment, with the, of course, only 3 semesters worth, and which we've studied New Zealand politics, and we've gone over the legislation that is involved in New Zealand politics. And as of currently at the university, I currently hold a governance role on a board of studies. And I guess even throughout high school, I've always been trying to get involved, and I suppose be involved with the community, and actually, I guess, helping everyone that I can. Like, my age did not change the fact that I still wanted and I have planned to essentially dedicate my life to the community in any way that I can. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Well, yeah. I mean, so it's good having all of that. It's good having the passion in it to do it. And I wonder actually why you are running for mayor. And I was thinking about it because you're studying politics. Is this an exercise? No. Is this a practical exercise to go alongside your theoretical, or are you actually just trying? Because I think some candidates are doing this, and this is not. I'm not saying you're doing this, but some candidates stand for mayor because they want to get onto council, and it gives them more exposure. So why are you actually running to be mayor? What's the rationale behind it?
I mean, mayor. It was. The biggest thing that I kind of identified with running for the mayoralty was, I guess, identifying the issue with the cooperation between the council staff and the public. And I'm not running as a practical thing to go along with the politics degree. Like, considering everything that I've had to go through even up to this point, I wouldn't have done it for that reason. Because it can be quite, I suppose, in a abusive and toxic environment, that I wouldn't, no, I wouldn't do it for that reason. It was to genuinely just try and get into a position where I guess I can help the most people, and which I kind of saw that being the role. And I would love to be mayor, and I'd provide some kind of youth leadership. However, I would also like to just to be on the council, and to provide that kind of youth representation. I guess that representation on the council itself. Yeah.
How will you do? Let's say you get on the council. So let's pick the middle ground, because there's 3 levels. There's nothing at all. There's council. There's mayor. So let's just pitch for the middle to talk about. I'm not saying you should pitch for the middle for a target, but just to talk about. Should you get onto council, how does that work with your university studies, or does that go on hold for a while?
That goes on hold. This would absolutely take priority. It's the position where I can make change, and the university degree, I wouldn't continue with it.
To look to come back at another day and continue on, you think, or just?
Maybe at another day, but I don't. At the very most, if I were to continue it, which it would be very much part-time, because it is the job of being on the council is a full-time role, and you can absolutely dedicate your entire time to talking with the community, and you can fill it up very easily with everything that you have to read, and just continuously interacting with the community anytime that you can.
I guess as well, you go from doing a theoretical political study to a practical political life. I'm not saying it's an apprenticeship, that would sound dismissive, but it's like you're an on-the-job learning from a theoretical university learning. Do you have any political allegiances? Like, are you a member of a political party? Are you put yourself in a particular voting block somewhere?
I mean, typically, I would probably say that political ideology would be kind of center-left. I'm not a member of a political party. I have been in the past. That was, I think, throughout high school, I was never involved, but after I met, I have previously been a member of the Labour Party and the Green Party.
So you find yourself sitting somewhere between the centre left and the left of politics, as people would define national politics.
Yes. However, I'm running as an independent candidate with without political party. I personally am I'm personally have the belief that central party politics doesn't really have a place in local body politics. Yeah.
You brought up the term a toxic environment before when we were talking about council, and how it sounds like what you were trying to say to us is you want a part of the reason you're running is to help a better communication between council and residents. And you mentioned in that moment you mentioned a toxic place to be. Sophie Barker, when I did this with her, she said it's the most toxic workplace she's ever worked in at the moment. And I wonder, you as mayor, with all your positives you bring and all your let's say things you need to overcome, like the less experience, how would you deal with a toxic work environment? Let's say if you're dealing with, red-faced boomers who like to scream and shout and get their own way and that kind of stuff. How would you as mayor, let's say, clean up the toxicity of the council chamber?
I guess the big thing is kind of identifying that every councillor is there trying to represent all communities in Dunedin. And I guess everyone does need to be treated with respect. And I guess having more of a collaborative towards a common direction, rather than, I guess, if you ever watch some of the council meetings, which I'm sure you have, they can get quite, there can be a lot of infighting, which to an extent is just part of democracy, but I feel like certain parts of it isn't. It'd just be, I'm not entirely sure exactly how I would go about it, but it's, I guess it's an identified issue that I would make a priority if I were to get into the position.
There are, I'll say councillors in there, but one in particular who believes that teamwork in politics is a myth. That's a direct quote from one of the councillors in there. You talk about being collaborative, and look, I agree with you. I think the best kind of outcomes for any kind of team is a collaboration, albeit we all know that it was pointed out to me yesterday, actually talking to Aaron Hawkins, that I've kind of thought about the council sort of being a team and the mayor being a team leader. But I think the point that Aaron made was when people are on a team, they typically are driving in the same direction. Whereas in council, you've got people driving in completely different directions because they're representing a different constituency. And maybe my analogy is not quite as fair as I thought it once was. So I see that, but you do have the idea of collaboration, I think, always gets the best outcome. But what do you do and how do you deal with people who have actively said and believe that the idea of teamwork in politics is a myth? As the mayor, I mean.
Right. Yeah. See, I know certain councillors at the moment have said that despite their differences, that they've found it they've still managed to find some common ground to collaborate towards a direction. But however, outright saying that teamwork doesn't have a place, I feel like I'm not entirely sure what I would do with that. I feel like there's.
Do you know what I like about your answer? I think that's the truth, actually. I think what you've given us is an honest answer, because I think when I ask that of other people and they come up with an answer, I'm like, I don't think anyone knows how to really handle that. I don't think you know how someone who's supposed to be in a room with you working on the betterment for the whole city, who then goes, teamwork is all bullshit, how you could actually work with that person. But no, look, I think that, it's refreshing to hear someone just say, well, I don't know, gosh, because I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't know. Let's have a look at a couple of issues that are obviously centering around actual what people are voting for. The first one is even though I was corrected yesterday that George Street is not being pedestrianised because there's still going to be a road there. I think we all know what I mean when I talk about the pedestrianisation of George Street. The idea that fewer cars, more people, the idea of one lane, 10 kilometres an hour, more space for access for pedestrians is going to be. I'd love to get your thoughts around that and what you think of it, and do you support it? How you support it? So what do you think of that whole hubbub that people are still talking about?
Well, I personally support it. When we've had where we had a mayoral forum with the Disabled Persons Assembly, in which it came up where Aaron had said as well that he had gotten an email saying that someone in a wheelchair was able to now return to the CBD, which is an amazing thing. Which it kind of, I feel like it's much more accessible, the current design, the design which is going to go ahead, where I feel like it's more inclusive of all community, of all communities. That I guess there can be a bit of a different feel to what it's traditionally been on George Street. Yeah, so I mean, personally, I'm in support of the current decision. I don't think it would logically make sense either to, I know Jules Redick is trying to overturn the decision. That's one of his platforms, but yeah, I feel like it would cost more money at this point to reverse that decision to make it a two-way, and you should absolutely take advantage of the fact that you have to do all the pipes to create to challenge the status quo. Yeah,
I guess that then comes down to, will it be a better outcome? I mean, I think you're right that it makes logical sense that if you're going to have to do everything under the surface, you might as well do something on top of the surface as well, because you've already torn it all up. I guess the question is, will it be better or worse? I mean, if you've seen any of these previous conversations, and I understand you have, you know that I'm fairly ambivalent to the whole thing, because I think that, you know, probably 9 months of the year people won't use it as a pedestrianised zone because of the weather. 3 months of the year it'll be amazing.
Right,
other than when I want to go to, you know, Harvey Norman for 2 minutes and can't find a car park. So I'm sure if I'm sitting there in the middle of January in the sun, I'll be like, this is the best thing ever. And if it's the middle of June and I just want to duck into a store, I'll be like, what a stupid freaking idea this was. So I'm fairly ambivalent to the whole thing one way or the other. I guess the only thing about it is, though, there's that idea of better the devil you know. You know, I guess there are projections and there are things that are said about how it will function and how it will know. We know how it functions now. And I wonder if turning this into the one way and becoming 10Ks now, if it's a complete and utter failure, we're then stuck with it. So, I mean, you know, there is that better the devil you know situation. And I guess it's a risk that, even though it's a 10-year plan, this is not the current council's plan. It's from a previous iteration. That I guess, as it's being changed, my hope is that it's not a huge balls up, and then because the other thing, everyone then stops going to that area because it's such a balls up and inaccessible. So I don't know.
I feel like we should. It is true. I'm not entirely sure how it will go, and which I hope it is for the better. But I feel like we should always be in a position where we are going to, like, given the opportunity to challenge the status quo, that we can always try and make it better. Yeah.
How does that flow on into other decisions? Given the opportunity to challenge the status quo, we always should. How does that flow into decision making and stuff for you?
Well, it's just, I guess, identifying the fact that there's always more that can be done. Like, I feel like there's just, there is always more, and I guess always looking of what we could do, or like what potentially, just potentially always looking at different options when we are looking at things, rather than just keeping everything the way it is. Yeah,
well, that's interesting, though, because I want to talk about Three Waters and I want to talk about the one-way systems as well. But following the theory that we should always challenge the status quo, I'm going to assume those conversations for you, you are in favour of getting rid of the one-ways, because that would be challenging the status quo, and you are in favour of Three Waters proposal because that would be challenging the status quo. Because you just said we always challenge the status quo.
Yeah.
So we don't need to get into those conversations yet. We will, but that sort of would flow on logically to me. If we're always doing that, then
I mean, always looking at the options. We don't necessarily would have to implement said things, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair. So always have the conversations for this around the status quo. Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What's your living environment like at the moment? Are you out flatting? Are you at home with whānau? What's the situation with you?
Well, so I was so I'm now living with. I've been a flat in Opao, but I've moved in with my partner in Helensburgh and her family. Yeah. But however, last year I I was with my family. My mum and stepdad and sisters are here, and they live in Ravensmore. Yeah.
Nice. So you're boarding with what do you call them, in-laws? I know, no marriage.
Yeah.
Sort of,
So yeah.
in-laws, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. Oh, nice. That's pretty cool. Hey, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about transport and stuff as well. I mean, some candidates have been talking about a train or a bus to Mosgiel. What do you think about public transport in Dunedin, and what would you do to make Dunedin a city that's easier to get around on when it comes to public transport, if anything?
I mean, of course, the problem with the public transport system at the moment is, well, even anything that any candidate says at the moment, we don't have the ability to. The Otago Regional Council controls our public transport system. However, I mean, I'm of the belief that the public transport system should be in the control of the Dunedin City Council, considering we control pretty much every other part of the transport network within Dunedin, yet not the public transport system.
Right.
However, I think that we do need, I guess, massive improvements to our public transport system to even just bring the reliability and the.
So let's take one step back, and let's say you had control, right? So like I've asked you, forget that. Let's say Jett's idea was going to be the way moving forward. What would that be? What would you want to implement or see or have implemented to aid in that area?
I think we need significantly more routes, like as you said, to Mosgiel, we do need more buses going out there, and I feel like I guess making sure that we have a reliable system so that people are encouraged to use it more. Because a lot of people that I've talked to, especially within the university community, the problem that they have with the public transport system is that it doesn't show up a lot of the time. The reliability has become a problem, and some of the bus routes, even like on paper, they kind of work, but like they need to be slightly tweaked. Like within on Union Street by the business school and the Polytech, you just see one of the bus routes nearly hits so many students every day, just because of the placement of it. That if it was one street over,
you mean the physical bus nearly hits students? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how does that happen? Where does that happen?
Oh, it's there's a corner by the Otago Business School, and so it's kind of, they've got a crossing directly across. The bus will kind of go, and I guess it doesn't logically make sense to have the bus route in that place, given students are changing classes every hour, and there is so many students going to and from, and buses trying to move as fast as possible. Either have to, I mean, I feel like to an extent they get annoyed at all the students which are moving across and just kind of go and then quickly stop. It just kind of needs to be reviewed to not be in like that high density, I suppose, high traffic area. Yeah.
But if are you talking about the corner that's across from the museum, like on the one way? Is that the corner?
Other side. So the Union Street that goes by the Polytech. So technically, there's two different. I think it's Union Street.
Okay, so further down by Logan Park.
Yeah. The street that kind of when you're driving past the stadium. So there's the road to Logan Park High School. Then you go past, and then there's a road which you just turn off. Go past the Polytech, and then I think there's a University Hall of Residence at the end.
Gotcha. Yeah. So what's the solution to that? Get buses out of the university zone? That would seem problematic because so many university students would use buses to get to university.
Oh no, I totally, it's just more of that specific location didn't make sense, I suppose. Like one street over. I'm just saying that there were a lot of slight changes which would be good, which I suppose aren't necessarily seen, given that a lot of the regional council is managing many bus routes as well. And that I suppose certain things get overlooked or missed. And I guess there are slight changes I think we need. Given that we had full control of the public transport system, I think that we should have free fares. I'm of support of fully subsidizing the public transport for everyone to encourage that alternative form of transport.
How do you pay for it? How do you pay for making buses free?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think, yeah.
So this is more of something like an
Yeah.
objective to attain towards rather than a costed out
Yes.
plan.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And also, especially because it's one person can't do it all. It takes an 8-person majority to do anything on the council, and you being mayor does not give you an extra vote. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You've only got one vote.
Yeah.
Have you spent a lot of time in the chamber? Like, have you gone and seen the debates? Have you watched it in like live, or have you watched it online like most people have
I
through
watched it
COVID?
online.
Right.
Yeah, I watched it online quite a lot, but I'm going on Tuesday with Mandy Mayhem Bullock to the council chamber on Tuesday to watch it in person. Yeah.
Is Mandy a bit of an ally? You guys allies together, or have you just connected because you're both running and
I
you're going
think
to have a look?
we've just kind of connected. I was just kind of, I guess she seemed like a nice person. It's not like a yeah. Hasn't been particularly it hasn't really been political. It's just been, yeah, we met, and especially considering
Mates.
the amount of times that we've been going to the forums. Yeah.
I'm interested because I don't want to do here, Jett, is kind of ask you like I would with a councillor. So like with a councillor, I'd be like, well, what are the costings? And, tell me
Yeah.
about that. And what's the budget? And because obviously people like you and Mandy and Bill
Yeah.
Atkin and those people who aren't in council, it's a different conversation.
Oh, of course. Yeah. I mean,
So,
yeah.
so I don't want to sort of ask you questions that are going to cause you to be like, oh, I don't know, because I'm not trying to put this up as a conversation of, hey, let's see what Jett doesn't know. That's not what we're trying to do. But I guess what I'm wondering is, do you see your candidacy as more kind of an inspirational, like this is who I would be, and these are the kinds of things I would bring, and these are the kinds of things I would try and do, but I need to get into the seat before I'm able to figure out exactly how to do it.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, to an extent, like, I feel like given you're not an incumbent, I feel like an incumbent to an extent has an advantage of having done it for the last 3 years and
sure.
has all the necessary information, and which there's nothing that I can do about that. It's just like there is the fact that I haven't been doing this for the last 3 years, and I do read anything that I can, but of course, I also have to do everything else as well. And it's, yeah. So I feel like, yeah, to an extent, it is more of, I suppose, ideas based, and I'm not sure exactly how implementation would quite work. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Like,
if I'm going to talk to you about Three Waters, which we'll do now,
yeah.
what I before we start, just so I'm clear, what I'm guessing is we're going to have a bit more of a philosophical conversation about it rather than absolute specifics. I mean, I don't want to, like, I genuinely don't want to put you in a position where you're kind of going, I don't know. I'd rather have a conversation with you that we can both kind of converse backwards and forwards and kind of nut out the ideas as to how you're thinking it. So what I'm trying to do is figure out the best way to provide you that platform, basically. So if we were to throw the Three Waters, how are we going to approach that? Do you want to just tell me about it from your perspective?
I feel like with Three Waters, it's I do understand. I support the overall outcome of it, of safe, reliable drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater. However, I guess the way the government's gone about it, I'm not in support of, because it was originally voluntary, that it was mandated, and I feel like it's been a rushed. Yeah, it's been rushed, and that they've kind of taken out the consultation process, and I suppose that democratic kind of process, and they're just forcing it across every council. However, I mean, I understand the need for central government intervention in certain places, but like it's, I guess, yeah, the way that the government's gone about it is where I have the problem. Yeah.
So you support the general themes of safer, better, infrastructure within those Three Waters, but it sounds like what you're saying, which is similar to some other candidates, is that the proposal as it's been put forward today, what you don't support the proposal as it's put forward today. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. 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 No, I don't. And as I think many others have mentioned, I mean, I would prefer, I don't think I would still be particularly in support of, but I would prefer an Otago Southland model, so that we kind of have more of a local, I guess it's more local, at least. And I feel like it's, not as hard for Dunedin to lose its. Well, yeah, Dunedin may not. I feel like it's more likely that Dunedin will have a say and have representation in an Otago Southland model in comparison to a model which I think it goes from Nelson down. Yeah, pretty much the entire South Island.
It's pretty much the South Island, less Marlborough. So that's pretty much the region. So what I hear you saying is that, as a general principle, no one's getting you to sign a contract here, Jett, that if we were a smaller part of a bigger group, you're less comfortable with as opposed to being the big boys in a smaller group. So you'd rather that we were a big fish in a small pond than a small fish in a big pond when it comes to infrastructure in Three Waters.
I'm not sure it'd be quite.
Well, the idea of the Otago Southland model means that Dunedin's the big one.
I mean, Dunedin would be, but every other group within Otago Southland should absolutely make sure that they've got a say as well in what's going on with the water entities. Like if we had that same problem in Dunedin with the larger model, we don't want that to be happening to everyone else.
I guess this was a bit of a conversation we had yesterday, not you and I, me with my guest yesterday, which is like the Otago Southland model, in my mind, even if it's just philosophically speaking, is no different than the current model because it's a smaller conglomerate of councils as opposed to a bigger one. The current proposal, which we're Zone D or Zone 4 or whatever it is, it means the power probably rests in Christchurch, and all the smaller places have less representation. The model where we're Otago Southland, the power rests in Dunedin. Yay, good for us. But then there's all less representation.
Then the same problem still comes up.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm not. I've heavily researched Three Waters, and I agree that the current model is not necessarily the way to go forward. I can see the pros and cons. I can see that, as I said yesterday, buying 1 million widgets because you're a centralized group is going to give you a cheaper price per widget than having to buy 1,000 of them because you're a solo entity. But I can also see the idea. I can also see the idea of less representation on a decision-making board is unattractive as well. So, and also I know that, and I'm sure you know this, that in Dunedin, our drinking water and our wastewater is pretty good. Our stormwater needs work. So we're not one of those places that needs $300 million of input like somewhere like Clutha does. But I can see that comparison of Otago Southland is actually sort of the same as the overall model. It just means we get to be the big boys and everyone else is smaller, whereas the bigger model, probably Christchurch gets to be the big boys and we're one of the smaller
ones. And we'll be the smaller,
Philosophically speaking, I don't know if there's that much of a difference other than with the smaller model, we're in charge. That's really the only difference that I can see. And actually, with a smaller model, we're probably going to pay more for our widgets because now we're not ordering 1 million, but we're not ordering 1,000. We're ordering 100,000, which is going to still be cost more than 1 million. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of conversation still to be had around that whole Three Waters issue.
No, absolutely. I mean, I personally supported when the council called for a reset of Three Waters negotiated. The Three Waters process, because it just felt like the proposed model didn't work. I'm not entirely sure. Like, I would prefer an Otago Southland, but I feel like, again, there still needs to be that reset to actually have that public consultation and I suppose that democratic process to moving forward to make sure that local voices, at least in the process of changing the way that water is or water infrastructure across the country is being managed, that at least in that process that we all need to be actually having our say.
Well, I'm also interested, you brought up the democratic process. I'm interested in what you mean by that, because for some people running for mayor, they think the democratic process is basically doing the will of the people. For other people, they think it just means enough time for consultation. For some voters, they think that it's undemocratic if the council were to do something that they didn't want, or they think it's undemocratic if the council did something that the majority of people didn't want. How do you define the democratic process? What do you think it is?
Well, I feel like in this case, I was talking about consultation. However, to be the idea that Three Waters has been mandated, itself has taken away the democratic process in the sense that we don't actually get a say in what's going on with the assets which Dunedin currently holds, but they are to an extent liabilities as well. Yeah, so I feel like it kind of depends on the situation, but in this case, I was more of talking about the consultation. However, the very fact that Three Waters has been mandated has removed the, and it's not been voluntary, has removed the democratic process itself in a I suppose, yeah, in a different way.
So if I paint you this picture, and it's hypothetical, but
Yep.
let's say that the government put on hold the process,
Yep.
and they put out a 6-month consultation period, and then they came back with the 6-month consultation period finished, and they did all their reports, and they came back to exactly the same position as they are right now, would that tick the democratic process box for you?
I'm not. Yeah, I. No, I don't think it would. It's just it would. I kind of, yeah. Again, democratic process. It does just depend on the situation. So to an extent, it would be if the people of Dunedin didn't want it, which I feel like the majority of people, and I don't think there's a current sitting councillor who supports the current Three Waters. What's currently being put through.
So in this instance, you're saying that the democratic process requires a majority of Dunedin people to support it.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
No, I would agree. Yes. Yeah.
Which of course does raise the question, then how do you run a council when there are going to be decisions through necessity that the majority of Dunedin don't support? Like, even though we can have a conversation about rates rises, and it seems to be a bit of a whipping boy at the moment, rates rises, because that's how councillors get in and say this is terrible. I think it's pretty fair to say that there aren't anybody. Maybe there is. I should hold my tongue when I say that. But normally there are going to be rates rises, even if they're incremental and small.
Yeah.
But what happens if the majority of Dunedin didn't want that? Would that be an undemocratic process? And how do we address doing things that need to be done? And I'm not saying this is Three Waters, by the way. This is more of a philosophical
No, I understand. Yeah.
How do we address, as the council, as the mayor, things that have to be done, right, but are not supported by the majority of the city, of the residents? How do you address that as mayor?
I think it's about addressing that, I suppose, public perception with, I mean, there are a lot of things, and I guess showing why it's needed. And I suppose showing long term why the decisions have been made.
Sure, but if you do all of that, if you explain it to the hilt, if you come on podcasts, if you use the ODT, you go on OAR, and you go on the local radio shows, and you're in the ODT news, you do everything. You inform everybody as to why the decisions are being made. Then the public still goes, "No, I don't want that." Is that then undemocratic, or is that actually sometimes the public don't know what has to happen because sometimes they don't understand the flow and effect from the financial input or whatever? Or are you saying in general you should, assuming that they're informed properly and everything's out there, that you should go with what the public want?
That's a good question.
Because if that's the case, when you become mayor, I'm going to start a consultancy to halve my rates. Because I tell you what, no matter how much information you put out there that says that why they shouldn't be halved, I guarantee you I would be able to get the majority of support of people who want to halve their rates. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I do think in certain things the council does, I suppose, the council has to do what's best for the city. And
so the question is, if they have to do what's best for the city, and you believe in the quote unquote democratic process, and I think that's a bit of a nebulous term, not by you, but by everyone, because it means different things to different people. How comfortable are you with making those decisions? Say again?
Sorry, you just cut out. I missed.
Sorry. I just said that term democratic process is a bit nebulous, not by you, but because different people means different things to them. So how do you make the decision? How do you as Mayor Jett make the decision, those hard decisions, where 80% of the population, and I'm making up a number, don't want something, but and the council has understood because they've got all the background of why it's best for Dunedin and it has to be pushed through? Do you then just bite the bullet and push it through, and then all of a sudden you're the person that everyone's complaining about as the terrible mayor, and they're making these decisions against the will of the people? How do you do that? Are you ready for that?
I suppose that it'd be, Well, I mean, in terms of specifically with rates, the
Mhm.
rates rises recently have been, well, they've been very large. I do, especially because we're during a cost of living crisis, and where we had the pandemic as well, and due to the major water infrastructure upgrades, which I think is which is a very large part of the 10-year plan, and I think that needs to.
Oh, are we still there, Jett? You just dropped out there for a second there. You still with me?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I'm still
Are you
here.
back? You're back.
Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah.
You were just telling us about the rates rises.
With the rates rises, I mean, there is a lot of work that has to be done, which especially underinvested. I mean, I remember in the last election for Dunedin, one of the big things that kept on coming up was an underinvested infrastructure to keep rates low, which now I guess we're now addressing the problems that we should have dealt with at the time. And I suppose we're still going to have to do it at some point. With certain things we're still going to have to do at some point. And I guess it is acknowledging that certain things just have to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. And I think that's probably one of the cruxes of the difficulty of the position of mayor is every mayor is always going to do some things that some very squeaky wheels are going to scream at them for being undemocratic. So yeah, I mean, I think that the idea of democracy is, you get to vote in who you want, you give them the responsibility for 3 years, and if you don't like it, you vote them out at the other end. I don't believe in following the will of the people carte blanche, because there's going to be decisions sometimes that need to be made that the majority of people don't like. I mean, most of us don't want to pay tax. Most of us don't want to just stay on 100 k's an hour on the open road. We want to go 110 or 115, and we're coerced.
But of course, certain things just have to. Certain things do just have to be done, and I feel like that is.
Whether we like it or not. All right. Hey, what about, have you had much thoughts around the whole one-way, two-way debate? Only because it's been a debate on here. I mean, you are at university, and one of the reasons that Waka Kotahi seems to be talking about changing the one-ways into two-ways is because of it running past the university. So this could be right up your alley for talking about that. Do you have any general thoughts about that idea?
Well, I suppose it is important to acknowledge that the one-way versus two-way vote, at least, just to start off with, it wasn't to change it to a two-way. It was to have the conversation about one-way or two-way, which I feel like certain people have kind of neglected, especially with mayoral forums that have come up. And I mean, I'm absolutely open to having the conversation. I think from my experience on them, I mean, students do to an extent. At times, they will just walk, just cross the state highway as though it's not a state highway, especially at night. I've seen it happen many times, which to an extent can be unsafe. I think there would be, especially in this case, we have to make sure that we are, listening to everyone in Dunedin about what the public in general wants, which is but it's good to have the consultation, because I know that there have been some surveys saying that the majority of people support the one-way system over the two-way system. However, I think we should at least be open to having the conversation about another option. And of course, the current one-way system wouldn't be how it is today either. There would be a reduction of speed limits.
I think we learned that yesterday, didn't we? Which I didn't know about, and I understand you watched the conversation with Aaron Hawkins. It was the first time I'd heard it being said that there is a disingenuous conversation going on right now, which is leave it alone or change it. Whereas actually, my understanding now that the leave it alone option is not even on the table. I mean, the leave it alone option is something similar to what that is now, but there is no, but in the future it is not going to be as it is now, no matter what. So the conversation should be started from how much do we want to change it, as opposed to we don't want to change it, because that's actually off the table. Waka Kotahi, I believe, has already said that's off the table. There's going to be some kind of change. Yeah.
Obviously, with the change to a two-way system, it would result in a large cost for ratepayers, because there's now another road which has to be maintained. So the one-way system, because state highways are fully managed by Waka Kotahi, but I still think that we should have the conversation about alternative options, and if something were to present itself with a whole lot of evidence behind it as to why we should change, then we should consider it. Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like smart. Being informative. The name word just jumped out of my head. Consultation, smart consultation, isn't it? It's like knowing what the options are and then making your decision. And I believe, as I said from yesterday's conversation, one of the things at the moment is, there are a lot of councillors and certainly candidates making very loud and, absolute kind of comments about all this when we don't have actually the information yet to make those decisions or not. So,
I do think that the reporting somewhat does illustrate that they've just, at times when you look at it, that it is just suddenly, it looks like it's a simple conversation that they've just gone, oh, we're changing it to a two-way. That it's when I've looked at the article, it does kind of, I had to talk to a couple of the councillors about that vote, because I thought that the reporting to an extent misled people. Yeah.
It's called burying the headline, Jett. Like they have a little line somewhere in there further the way down which is accurate, and the headline's basically a physical newspaper version of clickbait, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd be interested to know as well, with obviously you're investigating as much as you can, what's happening through Dunedin and how things are funded or looked after. Is there anything that you know of, pardon me, anything that you might know or you found out that you think is well underfunded in Dunedin that needs more funding? I mean, you kind of talked about public transport, but is there anything else that comes to mind?
Oh yeah, I mean, personally, I got invited to earlier this year to the opening of the Otipoti Youth Space, which was a place for I think 12 to 17-year-olds, and that was I suppose it was a safe place to go in the city centre, that with no kind of affiliation, just a safe place to kind of socialize in the city centre with no kind of affiliation to any group or organization. It was just, I guess, exactly, that's the one. Yep. They had a 2-week trial, which I thought was great. I went along a couple of times to talk to everyone, and personally, I would love to see that. I would love to see it actually made permanent within the city centre. Yeah.
So that was like a pop-up, was it? And it's now no longer.
Yeah. So it was the place is the community gallery, and then the space right off it. Yeah.
Next to the fringe offices. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean. All right.
Yeah.
Oh, very good. So do you think that things pertaining to youth is underfunded in Dunedin in general, or is that just a good example of something?
Yeah, I feel like that's something highly. Oh, I mean, I don't have all of the information. I've just throughout this time this year, I've just been trying to essentially talk to as many community groups, NGOs, and just any kind of person or anyone just about the issues that they've brought up, and it's what I've been trying to run a campaign on. I suppose, like anything that I've brought into the campaign, I have not once. It's not come from me. It's come from someone else. It's
right,
making sure that I'm not promoting my own agenda for this. Yeah.
So you're as was said in a recent my tongue's in my cheek, by the way, when I say this, but a recent American political, you're hiring the best people. I will find the best people, but you literally are finding the experts and learning from them to help shape your opinion.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. What about the flip side? Do you look to see if anything in Dunedin that's massively overfunded, like there's a waste or anything like that? Do you know of anything, or have you come across anything?
I mean, I think that it's good to just have a review into the spending of the council, but like, I don't have anything specific. Like, I feel, I don't have access. Yeah, yeah, I just don't really have any particular idea of what is being overfunded or yeah.
Okay. Hey, I'd like to know from you what you think of the government's response to the COVID pandemic for the last couple of years. I mean, you were a young person who would have been impacted by it. How do you think the government's handled all of it?
Yeah. I mean, it's been kind of interesting situation because, of course, I was in my final year of high school when it first happened. So I think that would have been, yeah, it's funny because all of my teachers were very, they started to change their story quite quickly. They were all like, nothing's going to happen in New Zealand. Then they started being a little bit more paranoid and saying something is going to happen. And then eventually the lockdown did happen. But I suppose the lockdowns, I totally understood them. The traffic light system. I mean, I'm fully vaccinated. I suppose. Yeah, no, I've been pretty much in support of the government's response to COVID. I've understood why they've done everything, and it's a tough situation because it's no matter what you do, you're going to get hate. Yeah.
So it sounds like you're saying, I hear you picking your words carefully, but you're saying in general you've been supportive of what they're doing, but we would all acknowledge that nothing's perfect. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, fair enough.
That's relatively, yeah.
Hey, look, I've got a few kind of questions to wrap up for you with. It's sort of questions that I didn't ask these of the mayor because he is the mayor, and I'm asking other people why they should be the mayor. But all the other candidates I've sort of asked these questions to. So there is, according to the ODT, there is a quote trio of retiring Dunedin City councillors that say the city has been progressing nicely. That's what these retiring councillors say. And so I'm interested as to why you think you would be a better mayor than the incumbent mayor, seeing that some people who are leaving council are saying, yeah, things are going pretty well. Why do you think you'd be better than Aaron Hawkins?
Oh, well, I think that with that, I mean, the council have done some good things, like in terms of sustainability and climate change. However, I still think we need a climate change action plan in Dunedin. But I think the big thing that I identified throughout this campaign is the thing that keeps on coming up was that representation for everyone, and that people aren't feeling heard, or at least when they're talking to the council, they're not feeling respected, or that it's more of a superficial thing that people aren't. It's the ticker box saying that we consulted rather than actually actively engaging with or actively listening with what they're actually saying. So I think the big thing that I would be going for is making sure that everyone's being represented, and to try and create that kind of environment where there is that cooperation between the council staff and the public, which I feel like hasn't quite been up to what it could be. However, the council has done some good things over the last few years. Yeah.
What are your priorities as mayor? So if you would be mayor, you're in the big chair. What would your your main 3 or 4, whatever, it doesn't have to be that many, but the main things that you'd want to sort of to get out there to stamp it like Jett's mayoralty is about? What would those few things be?
Well, I think going back to what I just said with the representation for everyone, I think that we need to increase consultation, and that we need to I suppose have an education campaign to teach, because there are a lot of people, especially within the younger community that I've talked to, who would like to get involved with local politics or like to just have their say. However, they don't know the first place to start. So I think having an education campaign on how to get involved. And again, that kind of leads directly into that cooperation, and making sure that everyone's being represented, and I guess councils are actively on the ground, treating it as a full-time job, and going to and actively engaging with people in the community on the ground. And I guess the other things, there's so many. I suppose climate change is definitely a big thing. We need a climate change action plan. And I suppose there is no specific plan as to what the council is going to do against climate change. Like, there are things that lead into it. Like, there's the St Kilda, St Clair coastal plan. There's the South Dunedin future plan. But I suppose there's no proper climate change action plan. And with Dunedin having declared a climate emergency in 2019, I feel like that needs to be a priority.
Right.
And I guess public transport is a big thing. Which I think the Dunedin City Council should take control of that, so that we can, I guess, get in a position where we can actually make change within the public transport system in Dunedin. Yeah.
These kind of questions all dovetail into each other, because what I also want to know now is, like, you hear in nationwide politics, centralized government, the 100-day plan, like your first 100 days. So same for you, like you're the mayor. What's your priority just in the first 100 days?
That would just be, I suppose, with the satisfaction with the mayor and council having dropped to 25%, just making sure that we can rebuild that trust and increase that consultation. So it would be mainly the main focus that I would have is making sure that everyone was feeling heard. Well, at least the majority. Of course, you can't reach everyone, of course, but just making sure the general public overall is felt like their voice is being heard and that it actually matters.
Yeah. For your first 100 days. All right. The other thing, this is a bit of a silly hypothetical, but it probably will tell us a little bit about what your absolute pinnacle achievement would be. Let's say you're mayor. Let's say you're in council chamber. Let's say everything that you would want to do gets blocked by the 13 other councillors, right? Except for one item. So in your term, if you could only get one thing through, what would that one thing be?
One thing.
Yeah. Like we wave the magic wand and we say, yep, this one's going through. This is the one policy or change that Mayor Jett can get through. Does anything spring to mind?
I mean, to be honest, if there was one change that just miraculously could be, it just I suppose us having just us having the public transport system back under Dunedin's control. I feel, which, I mean, well, once again, that actually requires the regional council more than the city council. But hypothetically, if it could just happen, I think having a public transport system back. Yeah.
But that's tangible. You're saying if you could only like achieve one thing as a mayor, having the public transport back under the DCC would be the one thing. Is that what you're actually saying?
Well, no, I feel like the main thing would be the representation, making sure that everyone was feeling heard in Dunedin.
Right. That's not really
I'm just trying to think about how it would work within like a vote, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, let's ask the last one, which is sort of a summary of those previous three questions. But basically, if you need to, and you want to expand on anything you've just talked about or anything at all, for the last question is, why are you the best person to be mayor for Dunedin moving forward?
Well, I believe I can offer a different perspective at the table. I've got a governance background. I've got a strong volunteer history. I'm always trying to help people. I'm willing to listen to everyone, and I encourage anyone to reach out and to get in touch with me. And I'm happy to meet anyone. And I suppose I just want to make sure that we've got that cooperative council and that is actually actively representing its community. Yeah.
Cool, man. If people want to find out more about you, is the best place to go your website?
To be honest, the best place would probably be the Facebook. Yeah.
Let me bring that up to show people where they can go. This one here.
Yeah, that's the one.
So Jett Groshinski for mayor, which is vote Jett Groshinski. That's the URL for Facebook. And look, all the best with your run up.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on.
No, look, we're talking to everyone, and I appreciate you coming on. I mean, talking to an old fuddy-duddy like me with such a young upstart looking to bring representation, I appreciate it a great deal, Jett. So have a good run up to the election. Good luck, and I wish you the best of luck with your results. And have a good weekend and a nice day off tomorrow for the Queen's funeral.
Yeah, of course, I forgot about that. Yeah.
And I guess we will see how you go come the first weekend in October.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, thank you again. Yeah.
All right, Jett. Have a good one. And Jett has moved on.